Welcome everybody. Uh, so we are the Claytons. We are the owners and founders of Mud Flat Press. We live in Olympia, Washington. Um, Everybody here so far is a poet, except a couple. One we don't know who it is, it's just a number. And Dolores, I don't know, but I think Gabby does. Maybe not. So I'll introduce the ones that we do know. Larry Johnson is he was the poetry editor of our magazine that we published in Mississippi back in the 80s. And he introduced us to a lot of the poets that are in this book. Ricker Windsor is a poet, writer, blues musician, fisherman,
and artist.
I first met Ricker when he was chairman of the art department at a school in Tacoma, Washington. And then he now lives in Indonesia. Jay and Bonnie Curlin. Jay is a poet and Bonnie illustrates all of his poems. So you'll see some of her illustrations in the book.
Right.
And Ann Nair is Ann worked with Gabby and I. We lived together at the organization called Everything for Everybody in Manhattan back in the 1970s. So we go
Wow.
and
Yeah, we've known Anne for 50 years because that's how long Alec and I've been together.
so after we reconnected after many years, became friends on Facebook, Anne was publishing on Facebook these little brief biographical essays that I thought were like short stories or poems. So I invited her to submit some of them first to Mud Flat Shorts, the short story anthology, and then to Mud Flat Verse, the poetry anthology. So it's great, reconnecting with her after all this time.
Yep.
Steve Shacklin is a singer-songwriter, and he has written the music for a number of musicals. Probably the most well-known one is The Last Session, which went opened off Broadway and has toured most of the country and even in England. And he's right now on a ship. What'd you say, off the coast of Portugal?
Then El Salvador.
El Salvador, okay. And Kathleen O'Shaughnessy lives here in Olympia, and we became friends of her through the Friends meeting in Quakers, and become very good friends, and invited her to submit to this anthology. I'm glad we did. So the other two people I don't know. If you would like to introduce yourself, please do.
Dolores just put in the chat that she's a friend of Larry's. And Steve just put in the chat, his screen is totally frozen, so he has no images. That's what you get for being on a ship way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'll just have to imagine how you all look.
Well, we're recording this, so you can watch it later if you want to.
That would be Dolores Jacobs, my friend I used to know in Knoxville, Tennessee, I guess.
Yep.
Who's also a poet and novelist.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Dolores. I'm glad you joined us. So now, any of you who are in the book who would like to say anything about your poetry, or if you would like to read a selection, we'd be glad to have you do that.
I suggest that we ask Ricker first because it's midnight in Indonesia and he has 5 classes he's teaching tomorrow. So
Well, that's very considerate of you, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very happy to be with you all, and I made a special extra effort to stay up, which is not so difficult for me because I don't sleep very well anyway. I dream I'm a great dreamer, but I'm not a very good sleeper.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've published Mudflat Press has published a couple of volumes of my poetry. I've done a lot of, I've got 15 books on Amazon now, and all because of working with Mudflat Press and getting the encouragement. So why I make an effort to stay up. Yeah, I'm quite isolated here. I have a lot of students online all over the world, and I'm, surrounded with young people, which is nice, but very few peers. So when we have a chat like this, and I can see people who are in my age group and experience, I'm very, very happy. So I'll read one poem that it's probably my favorite poem. These I sent three to the New Yorker. I've sent other poems to the New Yorker, but they actually wanted to publish these. I think the guy, the editor there, I think he felt very sort of sad that he couldn't publish them. And of course, the reason that he couldn't publish them is because I'm nobody, right? And it doesn't work out for the New Yorker to publish somebody who's nobody. But anyway, it was a near miss, and I was happy. Now, I was a teacher in Bangladesh for a couple of years, and I loved it actually, and I wish I had stayed longer. And this is a poem that came out of that experience. It's a true story. It's called A Bat. In Bangladesh, he got in through the mesh. It was a bat rolled up in a mat. Was he dead or just in bed, estivating or maybe meditating? He looked mummified. I had to clarify. He was quiet, too long on a diet. No mosquito, no fly had passed by while he took his rest in that comfy nest. I picked him up. He felt cold. He looked old. I took him up on the roof and just for fun, put him in the sun to soak up the rays of that equatorial day. Slowly, he woke. I gave him a poke, crawling on little bat feet, far up from the street, up there on the roof, and then poof, he was in the air, without a care, flying in circles around me, flapping his wings mightily. I was with him entirely. Just a couple of feet off the ground, he flew round and round, round and round with a flapping sound. He got his bearing. I was just staring. He shot straight out. I tried to shout, "Hey, you were a wreck, and now you're just a speck."
Very
That's the
good.
bat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ricker.
Ricker, you seem to have a thing about animals. You also have a short story that we published called The Otter.
Well, I lived, I'm from New York, but I moved up to the country. I escaped from New York when I was 25, bought an old house in New Hampshire. And so I lived a really deep rural life. And the reason I did that is that even as a young guy growing up in the East Bronx, basically, I spent a lot of my time in the Pelham Bay Park, which is 3,000 acres. And I'm writing a novel now that's based there. It starts out with frog characters, but kind of moves into the human sphere, and that's where I am now with it. But no, I'm very deeply into nature and everything that has to do trees, birds, all of that's a big deal for me. So thank you for asking, appreciate it.
Yeah, Ricker is also, in a way, responsible for Mudflat Press, because when we first started out, we called it Clayton Works Publishing. We had a business of designing websites called Clayton Works. And then we published one or two of Ricker's books, and then he asked us, he said, before I do any more, I wish I could talk you into changing the name. I think your company needs a sexier name. And we thought that was
Yep.
a good idea. So
So you went with mud.
with mud.
Well,
Well, you know, the way I said, I mean, I'm a friend of the South, other than being from New York, and I like that about Alec very much. And I've spent time down south, and the mud flats, it seemed to have a real kind of a, I don't know, some kind of a deep, some deep feeling there. I'm struggling to find the right word, but anyway, I think it was an improvement. Thank you, Alec, for remembering that.
Yeah.
Yep.
well, we went through another name first, and that was Gooey Duck Press. But if you know what a gooey duck looks like, it's spelled GEO, and it's a clam that's native to this area that basically looks like a very large horse penis.
Right.
So the idea of using a logo and wanting to be taken seriously
Right, we're a little
didn't
oxymoron.
work for us. And mud
I think you
flats,
made the right choice.
Yes, you did.
the first thing we saw when we moved to Olympia, we drove in and drove across the mud flats on our way to the apartment we had rented near the Evergreen State College, which is what we were moving here for me to go to. And so the mud flats have always been sort of a touchstone for us about being here. And that's why we came up with Mud Flat Press. So just think about what it could have been if we had a horse penis logo.
A whole
Maybe
other,
more sales.
right.
It might.
Nobody knew how to pronounce it anyway. People would pronounce it geoduck. They didn't know
Right.
what it was. And so mud flats, I think, was the right choice. I
Yeah,
live near the mud flats, and so it's a sort of an endearing place to those of us that are local. It also sounds kind of southern, so I like
It does.
that. Alec has that connection as well.
Kind of
I
swampy.
didn't pronounce
We did discover that if you go onto Amazon, we did complain about this, so maybe they fixed it, but if you go onto Amazon and search for mud flat verse, it comes up with truck flats.
That's right.
And so we contacted Amazon, and they sort of said there was nothing they could do about the algorithm that did that, but maybe they've changed it.
Oh, absolutely.
So who would like to go next?
I'm tempted to make Jay go next because he's not going to volunteer, and I may have an interruption in a minute because we have a guy showing up at the house, and suddenly I may disappear.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do myself is put a website that I just made this week just for you guys. Oh wait, I don't know. I'm trying to type in here and go, what is my website? My husband's got to let go of my hand because we hold hands all the time and I can't type. Curlin.weebly.com, because when you look at the book, all of my pictures are black and white, and they're not. I colored them in colored pencils, and so for me, I want people to see the color unless I did a black and white one. Some of them I did on purpose on black and white, and some of them are in color. And so as far as the illustrations, he started writing the poetry. Someone not with us today is Johnny Wink. And Johnny inspired Jay with what he called daily words. So the daily words are these words that he wants professors and students and everybody to learn, all sorts of random weird words that Johnny puts his finger on the dictionary and finds a word. And then Jay one year said, why don't you stick to the alphabet? I think he was doing just random anything initially. And then Jay said, well, a semester could be an alphabet letter. So then he started going through the alphabet and okay, we're going to start with and whatever. And then he picked really some words, some words that are random and bizarre and what word is that and why he picked that word. And so professors like my husband would then put them as quiz questions. So like, here's our reading quiz for the day, and here's an extra credit question. And the extra credit question was the daily word. So what does this word mean? And the students would answer. And then Jay started with the semester Z's, was when he first started, and they were little couplets, just asking the question what the word was meant, and it was a couplet. They got longer and longer and longer. And so now they're like Onegan sonnets. Just what are the various forms, Dad?
They're couplets.
Well, yeah, I said couplets and sonnets and Onegan sonnet, just all sorts of whatever the poetic form that word seemed to fit. And so I'm going to brag about my husband because he's not going to brag. Since you mentioned New Yorker, there's one poem that he was puzzled. He got this random email from some guy that claimed to be the editor of the New Yorker asking to publish a poem. And we're like, what? How do they even know about this poem? Well, our friend Johnny Wink, who is also a poet for Mud Flat and got us involved in this, is he sends all, like, here comes whatever, and he sends it off to random all sorts of people. And so all of these random people included one person who knew the New Yorker editor. And so this editor said, now there's this new discovery of something called the Higgs boson. And what's the Higgs boson? Well, Jay had to write a poem that was during the H semester, and he had to write a poem about the Higgs boson that was theory. It didn't exist at the time. They hadn't proved it. All of a sudden, they prove it one summer. So years later, this New Yorker guy says, they've just proved the Higgs boson. Can we have your poem? So I'm going to make my husband read his poem. I've got it pulled up on my little phone.
So this was actually published in the New Yorker the very month that they found the Higgs boson. So by the end of the month, they had this in the New Yorker, called The Evidence of Things Not Seen. How strong the lens, how keen the eyes to see what we hypothesize, to watch so small a thing in motion as what we've christened as Higgs boson, a tiny, massive thing that passes for what can best explain the masses of other things we cannot see, but somehow, nonetheless, must be. A thing so small is surely cute, though weirdly shaped, perhaps hirsute, and just as real as any wraith, imagined with the eyes of faith. Because in that particular poem, I had to combine the words Higgs boson with hirsute, and so that's how hirsute got into the poem. So.
And obviously, I can't illustrate that. How do you color a picture of something you can't see unless I get some kind of weird image of here's the molecules and here's what it would look like under a microscope? So when I randomly illustrate my husband's things, I go through them and say, what picture comes in my head? Can I draw anything with that? Well, unfortunately, Higgs boson, I could not draw anything with. And like our previous lovely speaker, I like nature too. So it ends up being animals and birds and trees. And and then sometimes what you'll see in some of them is like, it may be Johnny and Jay, because he has a poem about them doing sonnet walks, memorizing sonnets, and they're on their walk and they have issues like remembering everything. And so I thought, I can draw Johnny and Jay on the sonnet walk. And then there's another bizarre one that Johnny's playing some musical instrument, which is not true, but he's playing this musical instrument and they're around a campfire. And so I thought, I can do that. I can do like an outdoor campfire, this weird picture of Johnny and Jay at a campfire. And so anything that I feel like I can see in my mind's eye, I can turn around. Yeah, I can picture that. I can draw that.
Bonnie,
It's been fun.
Bonnie, I will add a link to your website on the author page about you on the website.
Then they can see everything.
Yep.
All the poems so far and all the illustrations so far. He knows, I've warned him, I'm going to torture him if we ever really publish everything. If, let's say, we publish the A's, well, during the semester we publish the A's, he's going to have to add the Q because he only has one Q poem. And I did go ahead and illustrate it, even though it's not I thought I couldn't picture it, but I said, yeah, Kabbalah, what is?
Kabbalah.
I did the tree of life, which is all these circles in a diagram and this weird thing that I thought I could never illustrate that, but I have to do. There's only one Q. I have to have at least one illustration for every alphabet letter. And so I've got anywhere from 4. I haven't illustrated all of them. He has 688. I've illustrated about 100. So you'll see all of that on that website.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you.
But
I
I'm gonna torture
definitely
him because
will
we have no OPQ, we have no R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y. So when he retires, I'm gonna make him do a letter a semester till he gets the whole alphabet done. That's my future torture for my husband's retirement.
So just to close, all the poems that are in this edition of the Mudflats verse all come from these lexical rhymes. So they all feature these daily words that Johnny had selected and that I had to make into a poem for a reading quiz. And that's what produced those. And the illustrations are Bonnie's.
They're
And we
beautiful.
wish that we could have published the illustrations in color, but we were not able to.
Sure.
Sure.
would have increased the price of the book by quite a book.
Oh, yeah.
Yet you have
Oh, yeah.
inside.
I'm investigating that type of stuff and going, oh my gosh.
You
even
can do
printing
it. It
there's
just
no-
means the book is going to be more expensive. So,
Right, right.
okay. So thank you, both of you. And who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Anne?
Yeah, sure. I raise my hand. I will. Let me find my stuff here. Yes, I mean, I've written really all my life, but never for anybody else. Except for and that's not exactly true. I've written articles and I have a radio spot on our local NPR station, which is a 5-minute, not totally unlike all my short pieces that I was posting on Facebook. Maybe not quite as personal, but musings, things I'm thinking about, and a little bit spiritual, funny, autobiographical. And during the pandemic, I discovered somebody turned me on to this woman, Laura Lentz, who lives in Kauai and has weekly writing groups. And I joined, and I'm still part of it, like 3 years later. And her format is to have like a 6-week session with an overarching theme. Like the one that just started is called On the Verge. And the first week, the topic was chaos. So she reads some poems and talks about, chaos theory, and we do a few warm-up writing exercises, and then she gives some prompts, which you can use or not. And then everybody writes for 13 minutes. So I ended up with, well over 100, more than that, vignettes that written in 13 minutes that I have turned into about to
be on.
kind of finishing editing stuff. And anyway, that's with these. And Alex saw I had been posting them on Facebook. And Alex saw them, and much to my, I was thrilled that he said, I love your writing. I'd like to invite you to be part of the Mudflat Shorts. And those pieces are pieces that are in my book. And so are the 2 pieces in this book, which, I don't know which to, I'll read the vignette. It's poetic, but not exactly totally a poem, which is called The Silver Bike at Night. When I lived at 3810 Boulevard Saint-Laurent in Montreal, next to the St. Lawrence Bakery, yeasty smells and the intoxicating aroma of freshly baked bread wafted into the deserted night street. I rode a silver bicycle in those days before I exchanged it for a silver mobilette. I kept it chained to the fire escape out back in the lane. I went to bed. Sometime after midnight, I arose, put on whatever the season suggested, and did not walk down the stairs. but was already on my bike, unchained like magic, riding down the empty boulevard, heading for Frank's loft. At his doorway, I did not knock or make any sound, but glided up to his window and, still pedaling, looked through the glass to see him curled up in a fetal position. I could hear him breathing. Noting he was there and accounted for, not only breathing, but dreaming, I turned and headed further up the boulevard to Andy's, where I did the same thing. I made sure he was all right, asleep, and dreaming a dream in which he floated like I was floating. We almost met, but I turned the handlebars and veered east to De Bouillon, turning right on Prince Arthur, onto Blurry and up Park Avenue before heading home. Making my rounds, taking pulses, heartbeats, and dream logs, making sure all was well. Passing my hands over the frosted windows in winter, I'd write names, draw hearts, and leave random messages that may have melted by morning or may still have been there, like a divine calling card. I'd wake up in my own bed, up the 2 flights of stairs at 3810, without waking up my roommate Nora or Randy after he moved in. I don't recall how I managed to chain my bike back up to the fire escape, or if I came in through the back circular stairway, or up the front stairs, or no stairs at all, not even the window. I was in my own bed, splayed out on my back, with arms spread wide above my head, heart open, dreaming. When I awoke, there might be a word in French or in English, a line from a song or a poem, cryptic or clear, a message on the window. I'd smile in recognition and stick out my tongue to lick the frost, inhale the message, and swallow it whole. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah.
When we're done with people who want to read poems or part of poems, then we can open it up for just questions and discussion. So who would like to go next?
I'll go next just because of my unstable signal here.
Yeah,
Although you guys are starting to move around on the screen now, so now you're looking like stop motion animation. My name is Steve Shacklin. I am a songwriter. And so I was very surprised when Gabby and Alec contacted me to be a part of this book, because I don't much, I think lyric writing and poetry are two different things. And Stephen Sondheim describes this as saying that if you could write a poem, if you write something and it's a poem, it doesn't need music because it's already complete. And a lyric is half of an image. The music brings another quality to the words. So, however, the way I write songs is I write them first and then I just throw music and then I set them with music. So I thought I would start with this one, or I'd do this one, especially because of the situation that's happening in the world right now. So I wrote this lyric called War by Default. The media's song. When the drumbeat for the war becomes relentless, because media is hungry for a story. Something they can illustrate with graphics that picture lots of gossip, guts, and glory. When the hero of the day is a politician or a technocrat behind some office door, a chicken hawk who never held a rifle, but sends our sons and daughters off to war. With no declarations ever made or resolutions passed, you can take it to the bank and you can lock it in a vault. So many end up dying when it's war by default. With our leaders bought and sold by corporations that profit from a war that has no ending. When violence is just a demographic, the marketers will chase to up the spending. When terror is just another thing you click on. When radio's a fascist talking mouth, When people think that peace is just too boring and the KKK is governing the South, though it's hard to think this time has come, it seems it finally has. So we jump into the fire and cover wounds with salt. It's war by default. War by default. With Putin, Dr. Phil, and Dr. Laura, neo-Nazi spam and right-wing blogs, spyware interstitials and religion, AOL and bloated bandwidth hogs, King Jong-il, Rush Limbaugh, Ann Coulter, Columbine, Dick Cheney, and James Dobson, Ahmadinejad and Sarah Palin. All we get's a choice named after Hobson. It's a really sad affair when all the world is so damn lame that it's finally come to this, that you cannot call a halt when it's war by default.
Yeah, like that.
Thank you, Steve.
And the music is very, when the war from the drum becomes relentless. So it's like that. It's like a little drum beat of war.
This is part of a song cycle called New World Waking. And if you search for Steve Shacklin, and you have to check how he spells his name because people spell it wrong all the time, and search for New World Waking, you can find the whole lyrics online. And I believe you can find videos of the whole song cycle performed by the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus.
The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus and the Women's Community Orchestra there.
Yeah.
And then there's also videos. I also did I shrunk it down to a cabaret version. So there's one, another version you'll find online on video of myself and 13 Broadway or off-Broadway performers and opera singers. And so we did it as a solo piece in New York City off-Broadway. So I tried to design it so that it could be done huge or it can be done little bitty. And I really enjoy being able to use it in different formats.
Thank you. Alec and I were very excited to be able to be present when the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus performed it in San Francisco. So.
Oh, and I should add that the reason I wrote New World Waking, the inspiration for it was when they brought John Lennon's Imagine piano to the front yard of Gabby and Alec in honor of the death of Bill Clayton, which the anniversary was what, yesterday or today?
The 23rd. So
the 23rd. So that anniversary happened, and I was the one who encouraged Gabby to put her full story about Bill online. And 10 years later, George Michael, the rock star, his partner Kenny Goss and Caroline True, they found it, and they flew me up to Olympia because I had written a song about Bill, and we all gathered around the beautiful Steinway upright piano that John Lennon had written Imagine on, and we all sang Imagine together, which, by the way, I'm now busking in the subways of New York City, and I'm singing that song in New York City right between two trains that go this way. But the inspiration happened when I started to sing that day, when I started to just the opening chords of Imagine. Da 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 da, that beautiful opening chord. I looked at it and everybody, all the shoulders went, like this. There's something about that music and that song. And I said to myself as a songwriter, what would it be like to write a song of perfect peace? That when you write the song, everybody who hears it, they just go into this little beautiful, peaceful trance. And that became the basis of New World Waking, where the idea, the little plot is this person is trying to create and write a song of perfect peace. And it goes through these different levels of violence. And that section that I wrote there was part of the middle section of violence in the community, or violence in the world.
Oh.
It's kind of funny. I got the pleasure of calling Steve and asking him, how would you like to sit down at the piano that John Lennon wrote Imagine at in my front yard and play your song and Imagine?
No,
And
no, this is what you said. You said, hey, George Michael wants to fly you up to Olympia to play John Lennon's Imagine piano.
And Steve said, you know, Gabby,
What?
there are a lot of cons online. And it turned out
A
to
lot
not.
of con artists, and I said, well, believe it if the plane ticket arrives in the mail.
Yeah.
And it did.
So thank you, Steve, for all of that. And who would like to go next? And welcome, Lene. I'm glad you were able to make it. We're just sort of going around and having different people read some of their work, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers or just discussion after. So who would like to go next?
I guess I will.
Putting this.
Guess I will.
Okay, Larry.
Nice to be here and to have some people I never met, and also glad my friend Dolores Jacobs is out there. I haven't seen her in forever either, but she lives in New Mexico, and she's a poet and has written at least one novel. I think she's working on another one now, or maybe she's already brought it out. But also, we can all just give the finger to the New Yorker for not publishing Ricker's poems because he was a nobody. I assume that was for hasn't been that was fairly recently. I don't think the former editor of the poetry editor, Howard Moss, would have done that. He published Jack Butler when Jack Butler was a nobody, as it were. So anyway, some of us have seen some of my poems in the book here. We've got a poem about East Abuchie, Mississippi, where Alec and I used to live, near to that small town where my grandparents had a farm. And we got my long poem about the Roman emperors Carus and Diocletian. I've been interested in Roman history since I was in high school. And anyway, I'll just read a couple of these sonnets, I guess. The first one is for Donald Justice. I wrote this for his 71st birthday. He died at the age of 79, and I'm almost as old as he was now, but it talks about the way words are used in poetry and how important words are. As the epigraph says, poems are made from words, not ideas. That's what Mallarmé said to one of the painters when the painter said, I'd like to write poetry and I'm full of ideas, but I don't know how to get them down. He said, well, they're made from words, not ideas. Claude Debussy died of cancer in 1918, but his works were still being written even during the time he was suffering. His last few works, which were really important and were used by him to protest against the First World War, which was going on at the time. So this sonnet is called For Donald Justice. It makes some allusions to a couple of poems he wrote. Which narcotic do we hear in Debussy's violin sonata? Morphine of the brain or poppy? Sweeping those fevered harmonies along with its mordant freight, killing the pain. Such concord inoculates us with healing sparks of vibration, fluid as those bred in poems, where similar tendril vital feeling comes only from words, as Mallarmé once said. Chromatic language, then, is how the writer makes drowsy ferns or palm-encrusted moons become euphoric, fused, frictional niter, fluorescing like meteor trails on pitched lagoons, to a cauterizing music with no name. The matches, strict concision into flame.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And the other sonnet in here is Keats in Hell. Most of us have seen operas about heroes in hell, and there's poems about it too, such as Baudelaire's Don Juan in Hell, which are very interesting. But also in this poem, Keats becomes like Orpheus, who descended into hell, and his music was so beautiful, as we know, that it caused the spirits of the underworld to freeze their motion and stop. It was so beautiful. So somebody once said Keats, who never turned to religion for solace when he was dying of tuberculosis, if somebody discovered that Keats had been sent to hell, it would prove that God was truly a monster. So Keats in Hell, and he's like Orpheus here. Sulphur's depths proved real, not just uncouth. God was a monster after all. God damn. Beauty was just the opposite of truth. And Keats was still a virgin, thank you, ma'am. An unbeliever, sentenced thus to barf his lungs eternally, just like back home. That cap Fanny sewed, lined with her red scarf, transmuting now, scalded the cranial dome with torrid iron. And fever imploded, raged until his brain backfired on holy plots. Its neurons fused to a neutron star, which phaged all agonies, and jetted forth not clots of mouthed blood, but measured violet sound, too purged for heaven, too quick for underground.
Beautiful.
Thank
Penny
you.
Braun, who was Keats'
Thank you, Larry.
love of Keats' life, sewed him a cap, and it had a red lining. He said, "I cannot wear it. Its red lining scalds my head." So if Keats had gone to hell, which I don't believe he did, because I don't believe in such a thing as hell or heaven, then I think he too, his music would have frozen the underworld. Thank you.
Those beautiful works.
Thank you.
Really beautiful.
Welcome, Dell. And so the only two that we have left to read, or if they want to, is Kathleen and Lene, I think. Whichever one
I'll go
wants.
ahead.
Okay,
I'll go ahead. Well, as I say in the biography, I'm not a poet or a writer, although I occasionally do write. Not with the computer, thank you, but I do scribble some things down now and then. This particular one, a good friend of mine who is also a Quaker, is quite a well-known poet here in Olympia, Jean Lohman. She had a writers group, and she and I would visit weekly. Generally, I went by to see her, and she had her writers group going. So she said, "Why don't you just stay in? If you'd like to just stay and be with this group for the next hour or so, you can do that." So I did stay, and I wrote this poem while I was there in that writers group. The poem is in memory of my mother, although at that time she was still alive. She had Alzheimer's for 15 years and was in a family care home. So here in Olympia. So that was a difficult time. She was a very bright woman, loved books, was well read, but she had pretty severe Alzheimer's for years. This poem is called "The Dimming of the Light." Remember that evening, May 2002, overlooking the south rim of the canyon. There was a rainbow, I recall. The sun's rays, geometric angles on red rock. A hawk sailed the updraft, quiet, no beat of the wing. I saw your smile, those little bird's feet at the corner of your eyes. No words, just the whisper of the wind, the silence of the breath. We made that trip, I know. The photos tell the truth. The heart records it all. The mind's eye searches in vain, nowhere to be found. Now, only the dimming of the light, the bewildered, vacant gaze. Is anyone home? Where do you go as you shuffle, bent kneed on your walker? Does Alice live here anymore?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
My mother's name was Alice.
Oh,
That helps.
I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm still working. I'm an old woman, but I'm still working and still enjoy my work mostly on Zoom. And I'm a Quaker and a birder. So the nature poems appeal to me, Ricker, and I'm always reading those kinds of things and enjoying them thoroughly. So I probably should look up your work.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's interesting. I'm a Quaker too, and the 7 poets that are in this volume who are from Olympia are all people I met through the Olympia Quaker meeting. It just kind of worked out that way. So, and one of them actually is Lene, who I met through the Olympia Friends, I think, first. And if you would like to read and join us, Lene, it would be great.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm on a new phone, so I'm not that familiar with it yet. How's everybody doing today? That was a lovely reading.
Thank you.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
I have not come and picked up my copy yet, but I was going to read An Average Hummingbird. Is that in there? It's one of my new.
Yep.
It is. Okay. All right. I thought maybe it was. Yeah, thank you for including me in your anthology. This was a lovely reading. Yeah, it was nice to meet Gabby at Quaker Meeting. That is an interesting group of people over there, lots of activists that I've connected with there. This piece, An Average Hummingbird, is about neurodiversity. When I wrote this piece, I knew for many years that I was a hummingbird. The hummingbird is one of my spirit animals. I had a hummingbird build a nest right outside of my front door, but I was trying to think of how I could bring this all together and explain to other people how I'm a hummingbird. There's other kinds of birds. So this is an average hummingbird. They say if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, waddles, flies in flocks, and swims like a duck, if it eats algae, migrates with the seasons, and water rolls off its back like a duck, it's a duck. I guess that's often true, and there's nothing wrong with ducks. They come in a variety of beautiful colors and sizes from all over the world. They are quite common and often eaten. Penguins walk, waddle, swim, dive deep, hunt and eat meat, honk like penguins, huddle with eggs on their feet like a penguin, thrive through harsh winters, and although a bird, never ever fly like a penguin. Penguins are pretty cool because they are unique, if you ask me. They come in a variety of colors and sizes and can be found outside their usual Antarctic environment. Penguins are great at adapting. They're rare to see in the wild and never eaten, though I've heard they taste like fish. Ostriches walk, run, love heat, and are very misunderstood. Did you know ostriches can swim and they don't hide their heads in the sand? They build their nest there, though, so it looks like they do. Known mostly for not flying and laying huge eggs, they are the biggest, fastest running birds. They come in muted colors and stay in specific environments where it's warm. Some people eat them or their eggs, but it's not common to, and I couldn't find one if I wanted to, probably online somewhere. Hummingbirds hover, fly backwards and sideways. The smallest bird with shimmering colorful feathers. They build tiny delicate nests and eat mostly nectar. They are very sensitive and polite, giving each other room to breathe at the feeders hung on the back porches of some of the nicest people. They are a beautiful sight to see. No one ever eats hummingbirds. In fact, they were once worn as jewelry. Neurotypical people are like ducks. They walk, talk, act, socialize, and eat like ducks. There's nothing wrong with being a duck. There is a problem when we expect penguins, ostriches, and hummingbirds to act like a duck when they can't and shouldn't. That would be ridiculous, right? Ducks don't go around telling penguins, ostriches, and hummingbirds they need to eat algae and quack. Penguins don't harass ostriches and tell them they should raise their eggs on their feet. And ostriches do not tell hummingbirds they should run more. No one makes fun of hummingbirds for hovering and flying backwards. And the hummingbirds don't think anyone has a deficit for not being able to hover and fly backwards, because only hummingbirds do that. I am a hummingbird. My wing speed is magnificent. I do not quack, waddle, eat algae, or fish. Stop telling me to quit flying backwards and sideways just because you can't. Stop telling me I'm flapping my wings and talking too fast. I dress and act this way because my mind sparkles and shimmers. I'm beautiful how I am. I eat this way because nectar is great for me. I don't shove nectar down anyone's throat or judge them for eating algae. The world is supposed to be beautiful and diverse. So if you are a penguin and can't fly, an ostrich everyone thinks has their head stuck in the ground when you're actually doing very important groundbreaking work. A hummingbird like me, or a basic average neurotypical duck. You're okay. Dive, run, be groundbreaking, fly backwards and sideways while shimmering. You are normal and exceptional, just like me. I am just an average, run-of-the-mill hummingbird.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lene, I'm watching a
Mhm.
hummingbird right now on my feeder on my porch, just out my
Aren't
window.
they the best? We feed them
They-
too.
They are little flying jewels, and you
We
know,
have so many
they're-
out here too.
oh yeah, their wings beat between 200 and 1,000 beats per second. Per
Yeah.
second.
Yeah,
How remarkable is that?
yeah,
You ever seen the baby, like their little nests,
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
which are amazing, like
they're so
teeny.
tiny. They are.
Yeah.
They're just like little quarters. Yeah.
They're little pieces of art. They're about this round. They have 2 elliptical eggs the size of my little fingernail. And the nest is made of lichen and
Yep.
moss, and it's woven together with spider webs. How good does it
Wow.
get?
But they must make their nest out. We don't have lichen and we don't have moss. So there must be some equivalent here.
They may get little, occasionally you'll find a tiny, tiny little bird feather, like a little piece of down or something like that in
Or
there.
animal fur.
And-
I think they got some of my animal fur when they made a nest. It was right by my front door. I had witchcraft hung by my front door. I hung 2 rose stems because 2 crossed rose stems are supposed to keep anger out of your home. I like
Oh.
good witchcraft. Anyway, so I hung them up out by my door, and the hummingbird, it was under the eaves, and the hummingbird built her nest there. And I didn't realize it at first. There was just hummingbird buzzing back and forth whenever I came out the front door. And I was like, what? And I looked up and there it was. So I tied the sticks on there even more. And she raised 2 babies, just like you said. And it was just so beautiful. Yeah, she knew it was a safe place to raise her babies here. So yeah,
She
I love
did.
hummingbirds. They're the best.
She gravitated towards the peace roses.
Yeah. Well, and we had a feeder out there. I think the animals around here know. Know that we love them. But yeah, I'm a hummingbird. I'm a type of person. I stem, so that's my flapping. The thing that I did at the end of the poem with my tongue, I do that sometimes when I'm thinking, or if I'm going too fast to slow myself down. I watch videos on double speed at time and a half. I speed read. I'm hyperverbal, so I definitely identify as a hummingbird. So I think there's a lot of people. There were different autism references in there. You know, people make fun of the nerds saying, "Did you know? Did you know?" But yeah, that's the ones that have their heads stuck in a computer and are doing work, and people think are introverted or out doing something, and they're doing something important building life. So I hope my autism peach touched you in some way and that you identify with some kind of bird. And thank you for having me read and talking about hummingbirds.
I was very happy to include it and your other writing, and
Thank you.
honored to include all of you in the book. And I guess I have a confession to make, and some of you already know this. I have a poem in the book, which
I
is
know, I was gonna say,
kind
what
of
about
funny
you?
because I I wrote poetry as a little kid and as a teenager, and my mother encouraged me and was convinced that I was going to be the next great American poet. Unfortunately, my mother lacked in a lot of mothering skills, and that's as much as I'll say about that. But I finally rebelled as a teenager and quit writing poetry. And so when we were I wrote this poem a few years ago, and it just sort of came to me, and I wrote it down and then shared it in a writing group in Tacoma. But when we were getting ready to publish this book, I thought, okay, I'm an artist and a publisher and I do all this other stuff. I guess I'll go back and look at my poetry from when I was young and see if there's anything I want to put in. And I read some of it and I honestly wanted to throw up. It was awful and it was nothing I would share. I haven't even let Alec read most of it, I don't think. It was just sappy little kid, nothing that I would be willing to share publicly. But I did have this poem and I got Alec to read it again and said, what do you think? And he said, I think it needs to be in the book. So I wrote it and I will read it. It's called In an Empty Green Room, and it's the only poem that I've written in half a century. There are times now when I recognize that I have forgotten you. Spaces now where you are absent, even in the everyday minutiae, until my finger brushes against the tag of the crematorium kept in the same glass tray where I keep earrings, and I recognize once again that you will always be 17. You live now with my father in an empty green room where I am always 12. I do my best to fill it with light, but that must be for me, mother and daughter, as it is always too late for father and son. And
Good.
thank you. My dad died when I was 12, so this was in memory of and in honor of him and of our son Bill, who committed suicide at 17. So that's the end of the readings, unless there's something we missed. I don't think so.
Getting
So we can just open it up for whatever people want to ask or talk about. We do have another one of these on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
And we have about 10 more poets that are not here today, and most of them said they could come for the one on Wednesday. So we'd love to have all of you join us again for that one.
Well, I think I'm going to call it a night. This is the latest I've stayed up since 1967. And but I'm very happy to be with you all, and I'll be with you again on Wednesday, which is 9 o'clock in the morning my time.
Great.
But I really enjoyed being with you and hearing these wonderful words that you've created. So thank you, and
Thank you.
keep on going. Yeah.
Thank you, Ricker.
Bye-bye.
I'm so glad you could be with us.
Yeah.
Take
happy to
care.
be here. Thank you. Take care. You too.
nice to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ricker.
Hmm.
And away he goes.
Yeah.
My what was it? Kathleen called it the monster or whatever she talked about. This is mine here.
Your demon spawn.
Demon spawn. That's right.
It's a cat.
Popping
Okay.
up here out of nowhere.
Wow, she looks just like my favorite all-time pet. Was a somewhat long-haired black cat with green eyes named Mandy.
Uh-huh. This is Sassy.
We're doing a pet share. I'll show my baby.
Yeah. We
Like that.
authors. Oh, yeah.
So cute.
What's his or her name, Lene?
This is Shannara. She loves tummy rubs.
Oh,
Very
nice.
tummy rubs now.
Everybody got their puppies. Yeah, I just got a puppy.
Oh, there's one. Yeah.
Yep.
What kind?
It's a Yorkie. and he's
Yorkie
got-
mix.
He's like a
Yorkie.
kind of Yorkie with his mother's the same Merle pattern. So he's black and white and he weighs about 5 pounds. And his name is Zeus.
You just want to.
Pretty cute.
Right.
He looks like a Yorkie Japanese cross or something.
He's not gonna say hi.
Yeah, they told me he was a Yorkie. Do I really care? Not really. But I think he's a Yorkie.
Cute and
Yeah.
loving. That's okay.
Yeah, no, he's about 10 months old and
Mm.
a bit of a character and a bark,
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit like having a toddler.
Uh-huh. Right. Lawrence, here is my Mandy,
Oh,
and she looks like your kitty.
Yep, that's right.
My favorite all-time pet. I've had all kinds of pets all my life, and people are always surprised when I say my all-time favorite pet was a cat, because I love dogs and I've had them all my life. But she was like a little spirit in a cat suit. She didn't seem like an animal in a way. She was great. So
yeah. So animals, yeah, all into animals. But no animals on your boat, John. I mean,
maybe gulls.
maybe
Seabird.
seagulls, yeah, near ports, yeah.
You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
No, I know. Jim had just walked into the room, so I was catching him up on what we were doing.
Hi, Jimmy.
So what kind of a boat are you on? Is it a cruise ship or a yacht or a?
It's a cruise ship. Jim does lectures on the cruise ship about old Hollywood, RKO, and
Great, okay.
the old movies, and so they let us come on for free, and I'm always up for a free meal because I am a writer.
And they
Yeah.
let you play the piano sometimes.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to do a concert on the 1st here on the ship,
Oh, nice.
and so I'm excited. I'm not really part of the regular program, but they always let me commandeer in a room somewhere on the cruise, and then I invite people in, and we have a little time, and I get to sing for them.
Nice.
When do you get home?
I'll get home. We get home on next Wednesday. No, next Saturday. We get home on next Saturday, a week from today.
Mhm. Nice.
Yeah, we just went through the Panama Canal, and it is an incredible adventure to be in the locks, and then all of a sudden you feel your ship go whoop, and then you go ahead and you go whoop. It's weird because you feel suspended in air, and you're looking ahead of you 3 locks ahead, and it looks like a ship is like floating in the air. I should write a poem about that. Ships floating
Yeah.
in the air.
You
Pretty
probably-
amazing.
Weren't they having like water problems in the Panama Canal?
They still are. This month they did all right, but they're worried about the next couple of months coming up. And what they do is they have to limit the number of ships
Yeah,
coming through if they can't sustain it. They're having a drought, and
Yeah.
so the only way it all happens is because they have a big man-made lake in the top of in the sort of high elevation, and so the locks lift you up to that lake, and you go across the lake, and then you to the other side, and then you go back down. But it expels a lot of fresh water. So if that lake isn't filled, in normal years, it's rain every day. So they're really struggling with how many ships they can put through.
And it's a major, I mean,
Mm.
I just read this, that's why I haven't asked the other day, yeah. I didn't realize how much shipping goes through the Panama Canal. It's really
Oh
important.
yeah, and then if they have to go around the Cape of Good Hope, that's actually a very dangerous trip, which I made a couple of times. And one time in Drake's Passage, which is right at the division between the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, those waters go in opposite directions, or they do something crazy. And it actually slapped our ship one time and knocked out a bunch of windows and stuff, and we had to go back and have it repaired before we could go go, and then we all went all the way down to Antarctica. So feel very privileged. I've seen the bottommost city and the northernmost city in the world, and climbed the Great Wall of China. And I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity to be able to do this on somebody else's dime, on the company's dime.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I'm gonna turn off the recording and we can just stay and visit. So we're not in any hurry, but I think we can end this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's about time for me to go anyway. So I really appreciated all of your work is just amazing. I feel like